الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. واشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Indeed, man is in loss except those who believe and do good and abide by truth and abide by patience. Four things, the simple recipe for success. My dear brothers, we gather today on the day of gathering, the day of assembly, in the place of assembly, في الجامع يوم الجمعة, in order to reflect on Allah's words and the Prophet's seerah and shed some light and some guidance into our lives. That is the purpose of this exercise. In Allah's mercy, He has given us guidance in intervals. There is the daily guidance, 5 times a day, the prayers. Of course, we can do extra, but at a bare minimum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put milestones along the way. 5 times a day, once a week, and then yearly, Ramadan comes along and is a month of blessings every single year. So we're here in the day of blessings within the month of blessings, the last Jum'ah of this month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a source of blessing for all of us, inshallah. And we reflect on His strong words and also on the facts of life, because it's incumbent upon us as thinking creatures, as human beings who accepted Allah's trust. What was the trust that the mountains could not accept, or all creation could not accept? It is free will. And so part of free will that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to have is the accountability, the responsibility of what we do with it. And part of it is the ability to discern right from wrong. You have the angels that can only do good. We may commit sin, and yet we were elevated above angels if we willingly go on the straight path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the angels who said, we are made from light and man is made from mud, how can we bow to Adam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear to them that He knows that which they do not know, and He taught Adam and therefore us the names and elevated us with knowledge and the will to come to Him. And so when we come to Him, we are higher than angels even who serve us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sakhar hatta al-malaika lil-ins. You have hatta qarinin, right? You have these angels who are sitting there writing your sins and your good deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put these magnificent creatures to work in order to assist the plan that He has for us. So imagine how important each human being is. Because it is easy to take the other line of thinking. There are billions of human beings. This earth is but a speck in this universe. It is a very small dot in the solar system with the sun at its center, and in turn the sun is one of the smaller stars of this galaxy, and there are billions of stars in the galaxy, and each one has little dots, specks that are called planets or orbital satellites that are going around it, and then these galaxies are billions in Allah's universe. So when you think of this magnificent creation, if you're a believer, you call it Allah's universe. If you're not a believer, you call it just the universe. Either way, it is easy to succumb to the cynicism of man being insignificant. That is easy to do. And when you think about the ease of which we perish, it's almost like, and I hate to use this analogy, but if you step on a bunch of ants on an anthill, sometimes that's how we perish. A plane falls from the sky and people burn, there's a war, there's an earthquake, and it's like you just bring your hand and you go over the chessboard and all the pieces fall apart. It almost seems cynically that life is insignificant, but despite all of this, and I'll explain and reconcile this image of apparent insignificance with the reality of the significance of mankind in the eyes of Allah. First, we come from the breath of Allah. And anything that comes from the breath of Allah cannot be insignificant. And second, we return back to Allah. So, despite the seeming material realities that we have here that are perishable, the soul is not. It comes back to its origin, into khulud. Insha'Allah fil Jannah. It could be in Jahannam. There are the two paths. And so, I guess as Jalaluddin Rumi said it well, sometimes we seem to be a drop in the ocean, but in reality, each human being is the ocean in a drop. There is so much complexity. There are many doctors here. They can talk and write volumes about the complexity of the human body. Likewise with the human soul. And so as we reflect today as humans who are required and requested, creatures who are required and requested to think, that is our path to Allah. We think about, why is there pain in this world? If Allah is so merciful, this is a question that many people ask. If Allah is so merciful and Allah is so loving, this is a question asked within the Islamic community, the Christian community, the general faith community, and even externally by atheists who wish to make a point that there can be no God. Why is there pain? Why is there suffering? Why does a child have cancer? Why is there an earthquake in which so many people perish who have not committed any particular crime in order to earn this type of punishment, so on and so forth. And we maintain, of course, those of us who believe in Allah, that Allah exists, He is one, and He is merciful among His many wonderful attributes. So how do we reconcile the two? Well, let me be very clear, because when you beat around the bush, you don't get anywhere. So let's be clear from the onset. And this is how I convey this clarity to non-believers. I say, you have to judge us by our full belief. You can't judge us by a little bit that you think we believe. We believe in God, and we believe in al-yawm al-akhir. الذين يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر. Why is al-yawm al-akhir so important? Because we believe in death not being the end. And here comes the real difference between us and those who don't understand why there's pain and suffering. Because we don't believe that death is the end, pain and suffering in this dunya is not necessarily injustice against the human being, because their lives continue in the next life. When you look at the full existence of the human that extends well beyond death, justice is definitely served holistically. If you become myopic and limited in seeing the end, the death of the human being, as the end of the story, I can understand how you can believe that certain death and destruction in this dunya is an injustice that has befallen an innocent human being. So now with the understanding that there is life after death and there's justice in this akhirah, we can now begin to look at the calamities in the world and understand the second point. With the same calamity, different people are tested differently. With the same act. Let's take an example, a recent example, the earthquakes that took place in Syria, northern Syria and Turkey. And you may remember that northern Syria and Syria in general had already been suffering for many years various calamities, and this came on top of that. You've had the Syrian regime's repression of the people and the civil strife that broke through after that, and the violence and the destruction of the cities, unlike we have seen since World War II. And as a result of that, of course, the displacement and the refugees and the life that comes with that, the difficulty of children not having a father or a mother, becoming orphans, going into the street, losing their way perhaps. It's a cycle. It's a cascading effect of difficulties. And on top of all of that comes this earthquake, where we already have overpopulation in certain refugee camps, where we already have structures that are abysmal, and it completes the pain and the suffering. So I use this example because it's an intense example. If we can understand this example, we can understand anything. So in this situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested all of us in different ways. And remember, the death itself is written on all of us. Can anyone dispute that? Can even a non-believer dispute that? The one thing that we all agree on as people of thought, of thinking, of logic, that death is going to be a reality for all of us. It's a question of when, not if. So if that is the case, if we understand, brothers, if you can please scoot up a little bit and make room for those who are coming in. There's no harm in doing so in the middle of the khutbah because there is a stronger benefit to the disruption, and that is opening up space. So please scoot up. I'll give you a few seconds to do that actively. Go ahead. Let's make some room, inshallah. If we can establish that death is a reality in all of us, so the fact that it happens should not be a shock. So those who pass away, it shouldn't be too shocking, the fact that someone passed. Well, we're all going to pass away. If I survive the earthquake, I might not survive the train accident next week. If I survive the train accident, I might not survive the car wreck. If I survive the car wreck, I might not survive the liver disease. Whatever it is, sooner or later, one way or another, death will be a reality. So the fact that death happens in of itself is not an injustice. It's a fact. How and when is up to Allah, the most wise. Here's where the justice comes in death. Because some will say, ooh, what a brutal death. What isn't a brutal death from the perspective of the dunya? Would you rather, as they say, the would you rather game? Would you rather burn and die? Or would you rather drown and die? Or would you rather fall from a plane? Or would you rather, we can go on and on, get shot or get butchered or get maimed by a tyrant. Death is not easy, but it isn't in the physicality of death where the question of justice comes in that particular moment. And it's where the soul is. We've never experienced death, but from what we understand of Islam, it isn't the physicality of death that brings the true pain and suffering in that moment, or lack thereof. It's where your soul is. So the good soul will experience relative ease in this process, regardless of how it looks on the outside. And the soul that is dark and has lost its way and has rebelled against its maker will have a difficult uprooting from the body, regardless of how easy the death might seem if someone is lying happily or seemingly happily, calmly in their sleep, as we've seen with some individuals that have committed horrible crimes, and people wonder, why would Allah allow this person to grow old and die comfortably in their deathbed in the middle of their family, in their sleep? We see the external. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of the seen and the unseen, the zahir and the batin. The whole story of Khidr was to teach his own messenger and prophet, who obviously has a lot more insight than we do, but even he could not get the full insight of Allah's wisdom in the affairs of mankind, and saw certain things that Khidr, who was tasked by Allah directly to reveal the batin of the things, then showed the wisdom of what these things hold. So we cannot look at someone who is a tyrant who passes away peacefully in their bed in the middle of their family, or someone who is a shaheed, a martyr who has done good and was killed unjustly, like even prophets and messengers, like even say, Yahya, who preceded Jesus, and he was beheaded. I mean, that's a cruel way to die, and he's a man of God. Did God forsake him? Absolutely not. There was ease in his passing regardless of the physicality, and there's bliss in the akhirah for him. He was not forsaken, and no injustice befell him. And the man who committed this crime against him may have died seemingly peacefully, but in reality, in the batin of the things, there was suffering in the soul that continues after it leaves this earth into the akhirah. So beware of how we see things versus the reality of them. That's as far as the death. So it could be that those who were good human beings who died in this seemingly scary way died more comfortably than you and I could ever believe or understand. And death is going to happen to all of us, so the fact that it happened itself is not an issue of justice or injustice. Now comes those who are left behind. There are different tests for different people. For those who are left behind, their test will be along the lines of sabr and salah, of believing in Allah still and not doubting His wisdom, understanding the difficulty, allowing themselves the suffering and the grieving process, but maintaining their faith through sabr and salah. Those of us who are distant, don't think that we're not being tested. We're being tested too. Well, what's our test? We didn't lose a loved one. We don't have a direct horse or stake in the situation. Well, as observers, as part of the ummah, as people who have sworn an oath, ahd, and the ahd is very important in the Islamic tradition, of being brothers, of being kalbunyan al-marsus, like bricks that are laid into a wall, stratified and united. We have an obligation not to look the other way and to step in and to help and assist those who need the help. And so in every test, whether you're distant or far, the same calamity, whether you pass or you remain, the same calamity, justice is served to everybody. And those who are near and are able to build up on their faith, to withstand the grief and to reach Allah nonetheless with their sabr and salah, have passed the test. And those who are distant, who do not look the other way or think, oh, look at me, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, I'm okay, I have a job, I have kids, I need to move on, and don't help those who are in need, versus those who step up and help, they will have passed the test, those who step up and help. In every situation in life, whether a calamity or a blessing, there are tests for people. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with health, don't wait until the day where you lose that health to begin to understand how much of a blessing it is. We thank Allah immediately. How do we thank Allah? What is the best way to do so? By using this health, by using this ability to do good, by using one's ability to walk, one's ability to see, one's ability to read or to understand or to think or to do God's work. Obviously we all have jobs, but every job can be God's work. No one is saying become a hermit or a monk to do God's work. In this tradition in Islam we have no such tradition, perhaps in the Catholic or the Buddhist faith. But in Islam, whatever the job is that you're doing, the halal job that you're doing, can be a way to Allah, with the Islamic values in place. If you're a merchant and you follow Allah's command to not cheat in the balance, meaning to maintain fairness in your accounting with people, to not exploit people in riba, to not use people in their hardship, usury, riba, and to keep the balance, the qist, to work hard and to deliver the best products, to have ihsan in your work as a merchant, that job is ibadah, and it's a way to Jannah for you. At the same time that you're succeeding and making money, you don't have to withdraw yourself Of course, there are times, and even the Quran talks about that. When it's time for salah, you leave for salah. But when you're back in the business, within that business, you haven't left the ibadah. You bring it from the salah with you in another form. That is the beauty of this religion and the holistic nature of it. If you're a doctor, how you heal people. You don't exploit people. You don't give them a procedure they don't need because it can bill higher, which in some countries, in some places, perhaps is a practice. You don't justify it to yourself and say, well, I have this contract with this pharmaceutical company. You give people what they need and not more or less. You give them your best of your ability. You do it for the sake of Allah. That is your ibadah. And it goes on and on and on, from a cab driver to a teacher, to a lawyer, whatever the job is, even to a student who studies and tries to learn and have ilm that benefits mankind. With that intention, their studying is ibadah. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, this dunya is fallible, this dunya is short, this dunya will have suffering one way or another, but the way for us to understand God's justice and God's wisdom in this plan is to understand the akhirah khayrun wa abqa. Wal akhiratu khayrun wa abqa. That's number one. Number two, iman with Allah and al-yawm al-akhir. This isn't just text. This isn't just space fillers. There's a reason why those two things come together so often. Because there are those who believe in God but say, God is so merciful that nothing matters. And there's some religions who have gone down that rabbit hole. He's merciful and just. And the akhirah is the reason why we must believe in justice. There can be no akhirah without justice and no justice without the akhirah. Al-yawm al-akhir. And Allah keeps saying in the Quran as a theme, this isn't a singular message. It's the day of reckoning, the day in which you will be brought to account for all of our deeds, all of our thoughts, all of our intentions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day is the God of hearts, the God of intentions. Because let's be clear, brothers and sisters, there's really nothing that we do that we actually do. It is not you who throws, but Allah who throws. What we have been delegated in reality is not the deed. We don't change fate. It's how we respond to it. The real power that we've been given and delegated is how we respond to things. Now, you may intend as much as you want. You may intend to get this job. You try your best, but Allah intends otherwise. You're not judged by your failure. You're judged by how you respond to Allah's will that you've tried your best after having tried your best. And now, this is not meant for you. Whether it's a job, or a spouse, or a promotion, or a travel opportunity somewhere, or a business deal, or whatever it is. Or even a desire that you had for one of your children that did not materialize. You try your best to make it materialize. And then you witness Allah's will and you accept it. That is what Islam truly means. That you accept Allah's will. And at that moment in time, that response to Allah's will is what we are judged by and the true arena where we should concern ourselves. Because so often we concern ourselves with Allah's arena. Fate, that is in the hands of Allah. Qadr is in the hands of Allah. It's never in the hands of human beings. We concern ourselves so much with that. Where will I be? How will I be? What will happen? How can I make it different? That's not our job. Our job is to live in the way of God in every situation that we have. In worship or in work. In social life or in family life. Externally or internally, privately or public, so on and so forth. Number one. Number two, it's how we react to the realities around us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. These are the two areas that we should concern ourselves with. And if we do, there might be a better chance for us to relieve so much of the stress that we have. And there's so much now in industry of dealing with stress that human beings are feeling more and more. And we can have many, many more khutbahs about that, with social media now becoming almost a amplifier of this type of social strife. Stress often comes from envy, and envy comes from people brushing shoulders with one another and comparing their fates and comparing the rizq and comparing the qadr that they have been given. And it happened when there were villages, and it happened when there were cities, and it happened when there were distant empires. And now it happens even more when all of that has been networked ever closer together through virtual reality and social media. And people are seeing and peering into each other's homes and living rooms and vacation photos and what people wear and eat every single day. And if your faith is strong, mashallah, but you might have a spouse who's not at that level, or you may have a child who's not mature or old enough. It's a real challenge, and it hurts people at a very deep level. We have to protect from that through Islam, but Islam isn't a dress code. Islam isn't some vacuous rituals. Islam is a mindset first and foremost. It's intelligent, it's deep, it's meaningful, it's relevant. And so at that level where society is suffering, Islam comes along and reminds us, remove yourself from the practice of comparing yourself to someone else, of envy. And remember that your qadr was set for you and can never change, not even by you. How you respond to it is the only question. And have ihsan in all that you do. In the moment, my brothers, I'll close with this to make it simple. Live life in the moment. If I have ihsan right now, when I meet with you afterwards, when I'm in my car and I'm only thinking about giving the ihsan that I can, excellence. Ihsan means excellence, the highest level of iman and Islam. In your moment, you will be much happier, much less stressful, and you will enjoy what life is all about. Because you look back and you say, oh, I miss the good old days. But perhaps those days when you were living them, you were not feeling they were so great. And time had to pass, and for you to look back at your childhood or your youth or whatever it is, this moment in time, for you to realize how great it was. Well, what about if we can find a way to enjoy it in real time? Because it will pass either way, and it's a shame if we only realize what we have after it's gone. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم لعلكم ترحمون. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. My dear brothers, before I conclude with the Arabic dua, I ask those of you who can to remain with us for 5-7 minutes after the prayer, where we will request your support from one of our key organizations working to fight for our rights as Muslims in this country. It won't be too long, but it'll be critical in our survival to continue to do this work, inshallah. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا، اللهم كن معنا ولا تكن علينا، اللهم وفقنا إلى ما تحبه وترضاه، اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار، اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وارحمهما كما ربيانا صغيرا، اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع مجيب الدعوات، اللهم تقبل منا صلاتنا وصيامنا وزكاتنا وركوعنا وسجودنا واشف مرضانا ولم شملنا وارحم موتانا إنك كريم حليم يا رب العالمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.
So quickly, inshallah, before we do the iqamah, next Friday, inshallah, we'll have the Eid prayers. We will have 2 Eid prayers, inshallah, next Friday. I believe it's going to be the 21st. So the first Eid prayer next Friday will be at 7:30 in the morning, and then the second will be at 9:30. So 2 Eid prayers, 7:30 and 9:30, inshallah ta'ala. Also, next Friday, we're only going to have one Friday khutbah. It will start at 1 o'clock, inshallah. Keep that in mind, and jazakumullah khair. Iqama, inshallah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا تقاربوا يرحمني ويرحمكم الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. وسيجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى، صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers, if I can request that you just stay behind with us for a few moments, as I mentioned. I want to say at the beginning that I'm not concerned about how this goes, because as I mentioned, fate is in the hands of Allah, and it's written already what is meant for this organization, whether it will keep its doors open, etc. The only question is whether we will be a part of it. That is the only question Allah poses to you and me. People say, oh mashallah brother, you're working so hard, you're doing a great job, you're helping the community. In reality, I'm not. This is Allah who will do it with or without me. He has been merciful to me to allow me some space to join this qadr. And that is a mercy to me. The harder I work, the more I sacrifice, the greater God's mercy. The more you give, the more you donate, the more you participate, the greater God's mercy on you. It's the reverse of common logic. And I want to tell you today a secret that we've kept for about 12 years. I want to start with our first amount, and I'll get to that secret because the cat is out of the bag on this one. There's a book that's been published, you might as well